Legendary. Thanks again for doing this. This is going to be great access for our parents. Yeah, thanks for the time and everything.
Yep. Cool. And then, we already did this one, so hello. You guys know me. Okay, so take it away. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you guys for having us. It's exciting to talk to you all about our program and who we are. And I know that Andrew gave you a rundown, I believe, about us and everything. But I'm Caroline. I'm coming at you from Los Angeles today, down in Hermosa, Redondo Beach area. And I swam in the 2008 Olympics alongside Rebecca. I was not a breaststroker. I was a freestyler. And I retired in 2010, so shortly thereafter. And yeah, that's who I am. And now we run this business together, and I also do some creative work on the side as well. So it's a little bit of my spectrum. But yeah.
Awesome. And I'm Rebecca Soni. I'm a two-time Olympian from 2008, 2012. Breaststroker, it's about all that I could do. And as Caroline mentioned, we work on RISE Athletes now together. We began this journey in about 2015. So a couple years now that we've been working to get the word out about ways to support our younger generation of athletes that aren't just about stroke technique. And we'll definitely get into it in a little bit, but Caroline, was there anything else we needed to intro to start?
Andrew, how much information or how much do they know about our program? Like, we can totally run through any of that before we start with stuff.
Yeah, I've talked to a few of the parents. Here, I'm trying to stay out of the view. I'll come over here. I've talked to a few of the parents about it, but what they've done, the physical side of sport really is only like 30, 40%. There's only so much we can accomplish here, but so much of what, and it's the same with everything in life, it's all mental. It's how you handle situations, how you handle stress, bad circumstances, good circumstances. And they have decided to dedicate themselves to helping others develop an athlete mindset. So how do you handle these situations in a better manner? Grace, you are killing this right now. But so they've decided to really reach back and give back to the community and help people try to elevate their mental game. And so Carl and I felt like this was an awesome opportunity for them to engage with a big group of parents at once, for you guys to ask questions, but also they're going to run through some of the topics that they traditionally speak on an individual basis with athletes about. And aside from that, I mean, you guys know it better than me. I want you guys to go from there. But that is the general summary.
Awesome. Cool. So first of all, Andrew, thank you so much for having us. It's been so much fun building this. And I know, when I went to graduate school, I was in Tennessee, and I'll never forget the day I was talking to Rebecca on the phone in my parking lot, like about to move back out to California. And she said, I have been mentoring these athletes online from all over the world, and I would love to create this business idea, this plan that I have. Would you be interested in working with one of the athletes that I have that's interested in having a mentor? And I was sitting there and I was like, duh, that's exactly what I just did. And her and I had been talking for about a year or 2 years about how lost we felt, how confused we were after sport. Who were we? What are we doing? And how much we could have used that positive role model or influence while we were competing that could have taught us how to be, a person and an athlete and be a well-rounded individual. And so that's a little bit of that background and the why behind what we do. And it was just a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer because, we got to where we were, obviously, because we were physically capable of doing what we were doing, and we trained hard and we worked hard and we believed in ourselves. But looking back on it, taking those skills and transferring them and taking those skills and feeling confident in them, I probably could have had a little more confidence in myself throughout the whole process. So that's a little bit about why we decided to do it. I know Rebecca and I were both athletes that we were very confident, but we were also I could have used a little bit more belief in myself and self-confidence, self-esteem, understanding how I could perform at a high level under pressure and go through really difficult situations in the best way possible. So it's definitely learning experiences after the fact, you realize it. And that's why we want to give back to the younger generation so that they can get there to a place where they understand how to do that and then continue to build on that. Because the more they know how to do that at a young age, the hungrier they get and understand what they're doing and how they can compete at the highest level and have a positive mindset.
Absolutely, and it's a really interesting topic that's definitely growing as a whole outside of sports. Mindfulness, this awareness of our thoughts, and a field of positive psychology, which is something that both Caroline and myself have studied and we're really drawn to because of how the process of learning more about our thought processes, and also, diving into basically creating the type of person that you want to be instead of just accepting where you are and saying, oh, well, I'll never be like these other people. It's take the people that you look up to that do things well and then model your own life after that and your experiences and your thought processes and whatnot. But, going back a little bit, I think one of the most, powerful reasons for all of why RISE Athletes exists has to do with, not only our experiences and what made us great athletes and wanting to share that with younger athletes, but also this idea that despite the fact that we were both very successful Olympians, top of our sport, we left our sports and we both, and, along with most of our peers, felt empty, felt lost. And, while that's definitely natural during times of change, as athletes, we just give so much to our sport that we often forget to even develop ourselves as individuals. And our tying our identity to our sports can have some effects later on once that sport is no longer a big part of your life. And the nature of sports is you don't do them all that long, it's always a part. I just went for a swim, so it's always going to be a part of my life, but competition and having that emphasis and having that be what I did was short term. And so we really wanted to bring ways that would not only, to bring tools that would not only benefit the athletes in ways that haven't really been done before, approaching from more a mindset standpoint, things that athletes in the past kind of just accepted as the cards that were dealt to them, rather than focusing on things like confidence and taking them as a starting point, saying, okay, well, what ways can I improve on this, and how can I approach these mental aspects the same way that I do the physical aspects, doing drills, doing exercises, and seeing the improvement along the way. And these are all things that, Caroline and myself have been working on and learning after retirement. So in the early days, we would call each other and, share something that we learned and excitedly say, I wish I'd known this when I was competing. It would have made me such a better athlete, or, at the least, it would have given me a healthier mindset and made me enjoy the process a little bit more, whatever it was. And it was very clear that we, it was on us, it was our responsibility to start giving this back to the next generation of athletes, and also, enlisting the help of our mentor community, who are all Olympians and going through these same experiences, and supporting them, but also giving them the tools to give back to the next generation as well. So it's really about creating this more balanced approach to sports. And the really cool thing is that the athletes tend to improve in their sports as well as improving outside of sports in their everyday life and their approach to, their school and even more personal situations when they're, working on a friendship that is bothering them or something like that. So we really approach it from a well-rounded perspective. And to give a reason for that, as an example, I had a college athlete that I was working with, and I'd worked with her for a couple years, and we were going into her championship meet. I'm asking her how she's feeling, and I can tell she's kind of beating around the bush, like, okay, And after talking to her for 20 minutes, and we're about to start wrapping up the session, and then she starts to tell me, well, there's this boy. And it comes back to this personal situation that despite the fact that she's going into the biggest meet of her season, she's more worried about having to see this boy there that she doesn't really want to see and what's going to happen. So all of a sudden, instead of strategizing we're doing a brush stroke, now we're strategizing how can I make sure the situation goes in a way that I'm going to get the best benefit out of it. And pretty soon she was focusing back on swimming again, and we were able to manage that situation. So that kind of gives an example of how, despite the fact that we all just want to perform better, we really have to take it from a holistic approach.
Yeah, huge. And I think it's a good segue. Obviously, your athletes have coaches, they have you. And so if you picture a triangle of support, we're the third point of that. So if the athlete has the coach, the parent, which are the foundation, obviously it's physical, and then you guys are the foundation, the backbone, doing everything and giving all your heart and soul, supporting them, driving them to practice at 4 o'clock in the morning, sitting at 8-hour meets all day long. Like, I totally have no idea how you do it. I asked my parents the same thing 2 years ago, and they're like, you're just now saying that? I'm like, sorry. And they did it with 3 of us, so I don't know how they did it. But, so then there's also the mentor figure, which, as Rebecca said, it's really nice to have that. And I know every coach needs a coach. We both have coaches. We both have people that we speak to about what we do with business and what we do with our lives and how we evolve as human beings, because that's never, ever changing, and that's never going away. And so I think something that we were just very passionate about was having that third tier of support, and what we both studied and went to school for and everything. It's wild how it's growing in athletics just in general. And so we're very passionate about extending that to the younger generations, because you can see all the pro golfers and pro tennis players and on tour with their sports psychologists right there, sitting there doing whatever, helping them focus, helping them stay calm, helping them tame their distractions. But where is it for these teenagers? Where is it for the younger population? So that's a really big thing that we also want to tell you guys, is that you have support as well through the mentor. And something that we do as a business is we have almost 20 Olympians now, and triples and triples of handfuls of athletes that they work with. And we also have parent support. So not only do the athletes have their mentor, the parents, you guys, they have support through us and through a community of other parents of youth athletes. And that's something that we're very passionate about, because it takes an army, and we're just now realizing that, being in our 30s now, early 30s, knowing that our parents sacrificed a lot for us, and we're confused as all get out 90% of the time about what the heck to do with us and our emotions and what's happening and all this pressure and everything like that. And so just so that you guys know, that's the reason why we're here. And that's also a big part of our business and our initiative, is to support you through this process. So that's why we're here today. And I'll let Reb discuss one of the things that we work on at RISE, and then I'll go into the other. But at the foundation of what we do is focus. So I'll let her take that away.
Yeah, and so this is when Caroline asked me, what's one of your favorite topics to talk about that we can discuss here on this call. Immediately focus. Focus is one of the first things that I got interested in when it comes to mindset development. When we say focus, we tend to think about, okay, my athlete is not focused behind the blocks. They're distracted, right? So focus versus distraction. But what really was standing out to me when I was studying this in positive psychology and these courses that I took was that they were defining focus not necessarily as being focused, but rather as simply, what is the object of your attention at this moment? What are you focused on at this moment? And a lot of the times when we're swimming in practice, it's monotonous, it's staring at the black line back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Often our focus does go elsewhere, whether it's our homework assignment that we have to do, what's for dinner, what did she say to me earlier, all that stuff. So yes, we are distracted, but it's more a matter of noticing your focus. A lot of times when I ask athletes, what's one thing you want to improve on, they always say, I want to be more focused. And it's a tough conversation if you don't really understand, well, what does that mean? If you look at an athlete like Michael Phelps behind the blocks, and he just has that intense look in his eyes, he's focused, he's gazing out, he's just like totally inward and ready and preparing and visualizing and all that stuff. He's very supposedly focused. And athletes think that, well, if I can just focus like this, then I'll be a lot better. But we have to understand that not every athlete works like that. Look at, Missy Franklin. She was a teammate in 2012, and we were in the ready room for the relay, and she's bouncing around and dancing and singing, and, we're in there with Allison Smith cracking jokes, and it was the absolute opposite of that focused athlete that we think that we should all be, that Michael Phelps gaze. And in our relay, each of the girls broke a world record within their own world record of the relay. So obviously we performed really well. Not to say that we weren't prepared and ready, but it's kind of this false sense of, if I could just focus more, I will be a better athlete. And so when talking about focus, I like to tell athletes it's not about more or less. It's not a scale of focusing more or less. It's simply a practiced exercise of noticing where you are focusing. So if your focus is like a flashlight in your mind, right? If you're imagining that everything around me and my whole world is just thoughts in my head, and then the flashlight zones in on one thing, that is your focus. Now, often the flashlight points here and there, and then over there, and then back behind you, our brains are all over the place, our focus is all over the place. But as an initial exercise to get started as something like this, and this is something that I was blown away with when I did it. So even though we're talking about our young athletes here, this is something that we encourage parents to do as well, because this is something that is affecting our lives post athletics, and so it could easily benefit you as well. But an initial exercise is I have the kids set an alarm on their phone for every day at the same time, a time when they're not in school, obviously, and shouldn't be sleeping, so let's say 3 p.m. And when that alarm goes off, they have to write down 5 things that they were noticing right now. And what this does is it starts to bring awareness to where that flashlight is pointing. And oftentimes they'll have a little bit of trouble at first because we're so used to toning that voice out, that voice in our head that's constantly talking. We're so used to just numbing it out, letting it do its thing, and not worrying about the content of the thoughts. Well, this exercise will start them thinking about the content of those thoughts. And over time, instead of every day, now I have it set every hour so that they don't have to write it anymore. They just think, okay, 5 things I'm thinking right now, boom, 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 boom. And a lot of times it's very random things. It's the color of my, my eyes as I'm looking into my, video screen here, or it's what's for dinner, or, it has nothing to do with the question that I just asked them that they should be thinking about, right? But it goes to demonstrate that our focus is all over. And then we switch gears to ask, what is it that you're focusing on when you're in those few days before a big competition? What is it that you're focusing on behind the blocks? And over time, starting to take to our journal, something I'm a big fan of is writing and doing these exercises, and start to craft, instead of what am I focusing on, what would I like to focus on? And so it's a practice of starting with observation, practicing that over time, and then we switch to crafting what we would like to have instead. And the amazing thing is that as we start to notice our focus, as we start to observe our thoughts, we automatically start making changes. It's the act of observation that creates change in and of itself. So a lot of times we think, oh, well, if I'm just observing my thoughts, is it really going to make those changes? Shouldn't I just start focusing on being more focused about making the changes, about the results, about the outcome? Shouldn't I jump there? But when we start to notice our focus, and I'm putting awareness into what I'm focusing on, and it's not where I want it to be, because of that awareness, I'm automatically going to want to change it. right? And so the act of awareness in and of itself brings about so much change in these athletes. It was a huge thing for me and that I found really, really beneficial, and something that, despite the amount of work that I've put into and learned about it and how enthusiastic I am about it, it's still something I constantly have to check in with, because observing our thoughts is not really natural to us, but extremely powerful.
I love that topic. I get really passionate about it as well, just because focus is the foundation of everything that we do. Everything builds upon it that our Olympian mentors work with their athletes on. And I think the coolest thing too about what we do is we're humans, and everybody has their stuff, right? So our Olympian mentors are always saying it's so cool to share my experiences of when I've messed up, or when I haven't been focused, or when I haven't felt these things, so that they can relate. These athletes can relate because we've been there. We understand. We totally get it. And on that note, something to build off of focus that we really work on and focus on at RISE is visualization. And okay, so this gets a bad rap. I'm just going to throw it out there. It gets a bad rap a lot of times because people are, the general society sometimes could think, oh, you just like picture this and then you just think about it and then what, right? So it's a very confusing topic at first. And I think to introduce it is confusing. It's like, well, if I just think about it long enough, it'll happen. Well, yeah. and that's something that we work on. Visualization and images are so powerful, especially right now with everything that the athletes have with social media and everything that they seeing positive images and understanding what that means and creating that image is so powerful for their success. So something that I work on with my athletes and that a lot of our mentors work on is giving them exact examples of their own visualization that they've done. So for example, when you're behind the blocks, we write out a script. We'll have them write out a script of every single detail they see, all 5 senses, what they feel, what they see, what they hear, what they taste, everything, just everything that they have in their scope before a race, writing that down, and then being able to read that back and understand that that is something that you practice mentally before you do it over and over again. It can take 30 seconds. It can take 5 minutes. It's whatever the athlete needs. I've done visualization with athletes where they lay on the ground during the session and I read the script that they've written to them. And they just are in that moment, just breathing and working on breathing and understanding that feeling of themselves before a race. Another thing that I do that's very similar to what they would understand now is, how many of you guys watch your athletes do boomerangs or take selfies on their phone? Yeah. So I have a way of having the athlete picture what they'd like to see within their stroke, or if it's a different sport, within their kick or within their swing or whatever it may be, as if it was a boomerang, or as if they're taking a picture of themselves doing it. And that really resonates with them. So sometimes they actually do it. They'll take a photo of that or what they feel, what they see, and then that exact image that goes back and forth in their mind like a pendulum becomes a natural thing that they see over and over again, so that they can create that exact technical thing that they're working on. So 2 aspects of that would be, one would be like a scenario before a race, preparation, gosh, if it's not even in sport, a scenario they see happening in their life, with a personal relationship, with a family member, with a sibling, with whatever it is, visualizing how they want that to happen. Another way, like I said, would be technical, visualizing their stroke, visualizing something specific that they want to work on, so that once they can see it, they will believe it, they will feel it, they will do it. And so it becomes this second nature thing that what they see over and over again will become reality. So that's a big one as well. And just images, powerful images of what they see, what they feel, is just so incredibly important for their development, because those stick. A lot of times setting goals and thinking about everything is overwhelming. well, I have to do this and I have to show up here and do all of this. It's like, well, let's just visualize it. Like, what does that picture look like? Because that's going to be what you see versus having to turn on your mind and do all of these things all at the same time. So that's a big one that we work on, is being mindful through visualization.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
By the way, there's like dozens of topics that we work on.
I know. I was like, I have so much I wanted to say right now, but we
know.
have to be mindful that we're here to, more than anything, answer your questions. You can watch videos of us talking, but we're here for you right now. And so do you guys have questions? And let's jump into that.
We are like no filter, anything goes.
Rebecca, real quick, I want to talk about your brother real fast. Clark.
Me?
So,
Clark, yeah.
So, her younger brother made the 2012 Olympics. Him and I grew up swimming against each other from when we were like going to zones at 10, 11, 12, whatever age. I've known him almost my entire life. We would go practically the same times. He beat me, I beat him. Clark, I think, is the embodiment of what they're talking about here, as far as someone who was so laser focused on no matter what happened in life. He just said, I am good enough to go to the Olympics. I'm going to make that happen. And so he started at Florida. I started at Auburn. I was a couple years ahead of him, but not great careers at those schools. He did really well. I did really well, but we both decided to leave. I ended up at Arizona. I finished out my career. Not as happy as I would have liked it, because I'll be straightforward with you guys, didn't do a lot of this. A lot of my peers were, and they did an awesome job. Clark did do it. Clark got to Arizona after me, so funny how we all ended up at the same place. But Clark stuck with it. At one point, I think it was 2011 or 12, his coach looked at Clark after a bad meet and said, Clark, I think it's time for you to throw in the towel. I think you're done. That was within 12 months of making the Olympic team, wasn't it? And that same coach walked up and apologized to him. And there's no kids here. But Clark and I were talking about it, and Clark's like, go after yourself. He's like, I'm the only person who believed in, and I believed in myself the whole time. You didn't. I made it happen. Thank you for nothing, essentially. Thank you for the physical side of the sport. But Clark proved that it's the mental side that gets you there. It's not the physical side. And that's why I'm super excited to have you guys here, because I am who you don't want to behave like. They are who you do want to behave like. And I told Clark, I was talking to him a few months ago, and I told him I look up to him. He's younger than me, but I look up to him a lot, because what he did impressed me. Like, Michael Phelps has done a lot. He's very talented. He's very good in the middle game. But it's people like Clark who I look to, and I'm like, you're an Olympian to me. In my eyes, you're the embodiment of what an Olympian is. And I don't know, he's a great person. But anyways, I want to share that, because I think he did an amazing job of what you guys talk about without being able to be trained and, have a lot of, he didn't have access to stuff like this. He just figured it out himself.
Yeah. And I can definitely add to that. And not just because he's my brother, but because I witnessed it. I would say this about anybody that I witnessed this happen to. His entire career, he was smaller than everybody else, which is hysterical because he's a gigantic human being, but he was a tiny kid. He was the underdog, he was like the small dog in the fight. And he was always tiny. He was always told, you're not going to do something. You're not going to do it. You're not fast enough. You're not good at this. And he just did not care. He would get very down. Don't get me wrong. He would get very down. And I vividly remember multiple times and him and I are polar opposites with sport. I was like missing my races and laughing in the corner, like the Allison Schmidt situation. And he was like 3 hours before standing behind the blocks biting his nails. Like he was so focused in his mindset of what that focus meant. And I was focused in mine, but it was very different. However, it's very cool to have the dual sibling relationship, to where I can understand his mindset, and it's very logic. It's very outcome oriented, very time oriented, measurable timeline, XYZ. This is how you do this. And I didn't have any of that. And naturally, it didn't come to me. I didn't know times. I didn't understand that at all. I just wanted to feel the water and feel good and all this feeling stuff, which served me well. But without his strength, I don't know that I would have been able to do what I did, and vice versa. Like, he couldn't have lightened up and just had fun at the same time and smiled and laughed. So I think, like, for those of you that have 2 children that are in sports as well, and I know Rebecca's sister and her have the same, very similar story. We both have that experience, and a lot of our mentors have that experience, to where you understand that balancing someone's personalities to help them grow as well. And everything is just so very important. And so that's something else that we definitely talk about a lot with parents, especially in our RISE parent community, is siblings, and siblings passing each other, and siblings doing this, and siblings competing against each other and things of that nature. So definitely a real thing, and also understood on our end as well. And I know Rebecca can speak to that same topic.
Yeah, and I think something important also to note is, despite through listening to you, Andrew, talking about Clark, and he always knew he was always, staying strong, but, that Caroline briefly mentioned, but that wasn't easy. It's not, we like to think of Olympians as these superhumans that can, we see on NBC when we're watching the Olympics, we see the glorified highlights reel. You do not see the grit and the tears and the down moments. And that is really an important part of the story, because otherwise we seem unhuman. But we're very human. And I think one of the most amazing things about this mentorship experience has been humanizing their heroes and seeing that we are no different than they are. We struggle with the same things. We go through the same experiences. We've just had to learn how to get ourselves through it. And I'm sure at some point, Clark decided that this is the approach he's going to take. And even if it's hard, it doesn't matter, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't hard. It was hard. And even the mental work that goes into that, maintaining that kind of outlook and attitude, it's easy to say they've got it and my kid doesn't, but that's just not true. That was a choice that he made, and that was something that he constantly practiced mentally, because otherwise he could have very well have thrown in the towel and not, gone on to be my teammate in 2012. So it's just worth noting, and that's one of the cool things that we really aim to do with RISE, is to bring Olympians more personally in touch with not only the athletes that they mentor, because obviously we know everyone can't necessarily do that, but also with, these kind of events where we get to talk to you guys, or our Facebook Lives on that, answer questions, personal questions, and really just get to know the humans behind the Olympians. And, sometimes shining a light on our weaknesses is the greatest strength of all.
Yeah, so true. Many tears go into to all of it, that's for sure. We're absolutely human. I don't think there's one dry eye at the Olympic Village at some point or another. So,
or trials for that case.
Yeah, trials.
Crazy experience.
It's absolutely natural. But yeah, good point, Andrew.
Perfect. All right, questions? You want to do Q&A now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so just if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, if there's multiple hands, I'll pick one. Introduce yourself, please, and then, run with your question. So who wants to go first? Don't be shy. Yes. Don't be
Like what type of question are you?
It's your question.
Yeah, it's your guys' question.
So what do you do when you're...
Introduce yourself,
sorry.
please.
I'm Lori Ryder. What do you do when your child can be a great swimmer, but don't listen to everybody around?
Could you hear that?
Halfway.
Can you repeat it?
So she asked, what do you suggest, or how do you talk to your athlete if they show a lot of potential, but they're inconsistent in the feedback they take and digest? I'm kind of paraphrasing a bit. They don't take everything in; they kind of pick and choose and are a little scattered. Or they listen to their friends instead of everyone else.
Oh, that's a good one.
Not in a healthy way.
Okay, so just so that I'm clear, you said when the athlete asks or only takes certain feedback from you, but then listens to friends.
I think the question is more around how do you handle if your child is more peer influenced rather than coach influence or parent influence even.
Mm.
And by the way, I'm going to point to the people asking the questions. So I can almost reach everyone in the room.
Okay, so I personally, when I think back to the way that my parents worked with my brother and I specifically, during that exact time when there was, first of all, giant teenager attitude backlash towards the parents. I mean, he was worse than I was, of course, but just kidding. But I believe firmly that his ability, my dad especially, my mom was fantastic as well, but my dad swam so he could understand things just a little bit differently. His ability to ask me questions about why I understood and believed things, and not in an interrogative way, but in a way that was like causing me to create the right answer in my brain according to what I'm believing and hearing. So the power of question asking was huge. And I do remember that being something that he did really well. Tell me more about that. Why do you think that she says that? Is there a reason? Like, what do you believe about that? Tell me your thoughts. And it was like constant conversation. And I felt not only included in that, but also it's an underlying sense of understanding that even if he doesn't agree or understand me at all, he's giving that ability for me to open up and explain myself, which then in turn, I created my own answer eventually. And this conversation could have gone on for weeks, perhaps. And so if there's like a specific example that may help too that you have, and no pressure to say it, but I personally feel that the question asking and having the athlete come up with that concept of what they believe in according to what they're told, because then that causes more conversation about if that's actually right or not on your end, which you're the final word there, I would have to say, if it's stuff that's not favorable.
But for our son, he can go to senior state. He can be ranked top 3, prelims and everything. And then somebody says something, it'll rattle him, and he could end up 50th or dead last.
So I don't know if you could hear. So
yeah.
You hear, Caroline? Okay, so highly ranked going into a race, let's say prelims, you're coming into senior state, sectionals, whatever. Ranked top 3, top 1. Someone says something to you, rattles them, and then they kind of choke, using a rougher word. But
I hope the parents
they let it get to them. How about that?
Yeah. Reb, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that came to my mind, but first and foremost, it's a belief in your own self, your own strategies. Basically, if someone saying something is able to knock you off of your game, it means that your mental game was not really strong enough, because it has to be bulletproof in the sense that obviously you want to let good influences in, but you should have this barrier against negative influences. Now, of course, when we're younger, it's a little bit harder to understand where this barrier is, and we're kind of absorbing a lot of information and still learning, our own abilities. And obviously by the time Caroline and I and our fellow Olympians got behind the blocks to race at the Olympics, we had years and years of experience in building a both physical and mental routine that created that kind of bulletproofness. But even then, it's not foolproof. And so it comes down to, to me, it sounds like a confidence piece. And of course, granted, teenagers are a little bit difficult because they don't want to do anything that you say. And so it's about, having them come up with it on their own, having them find this idea on their own, and being really confident in both their abilities and also the fact that they deserve to be there. I know that was a big one for me, even though I was seated top 1, 3, 5, I still felt like I didn't even deserve to be at the competition, which doesn't make any sense. But, on a deeper level, like Caroline said, trying to understand their core beliefs, and by trying to understand it, making them think in a different way through the asking of questions, which is huge, and really having them self-examine a little bit. Asking the question of, why do you think that bothered you so much? And it's a hard question to answer, but in the process of thinking about it, it might trigger some things that would really, point in the right direction.
Cool. Next question.
Hi, my name's Tina. Thank you for the Q&A time. I was looking at your website that mentions the face-to-face meetings you do with the athletes. I'm sure you can remember, high school and a full academic load and swimming, and it doesn't leave a lot of latitude in your schedule. So I'm wondering, when you schedule these meetings, how much latitude is there to work around the athlete schedule? Is there latitude to work around the athlete schedule, or are they set times and you can kind of make it where you can?
Could you hear that?
Yeah. Barely, but yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the priorities in creating this, was making it easy. Obviously, I've done in-person meetings before, but it takes half an hour to get there, half an hour to get back. And it ends up being a lot more time. Whereas these face-to-face meetings are like this, via, obviously not with a group, individually, one-on-one, but they're all from the video, online technologies. You're very trending up with the generation of, you literally have this mentor in your pocket. And of course, you work one-on-one with the mentor to figure out that schedule that works best for you. The only thing we do recommend is weekly sessions. They're 30 minutes a piece, but by keeping to that weekly schedule, it ensures that you're constantly working on these things that, we can't just preach. We're not here to just inspire and motivate. That is powerful, but at the end, we're here to create constant change, and that takes time and, most importantly, repetition. And so while, yes, very flexible, this is pretty much the easiest way to get FaceTime with an Olympian and not have to spend a whole weekend somewhere or travel a whole day for a clinic or whatnot. And so while, yes, it is another weekly thing, but, I work with one athlete at 7 a.m. before she goes to school, and, she's coming home from morning practice or a spin class or who knows what. Yeah, she has this crazy schedule, but for how powerful the work that we do is versus 30 minutes a week, it's pretty good balance between being worth it as far as fitting it into the schedule.
Mm-hmm. And considering, another way we like to consider it is like mental swim practice. So everybody would want a 30-minute practice. That'd be sweet. So it's also a nice addition to, and as Reb said, it's honestly, I don't think that any athlete dreads it. I think it's always the highlight from my perspective and from my parents' feedback of my athletes, that I have a highlight of their week, 30 minutes a week to get to talk to their big sister or big brother. And it's like a connection unlike any other that's exclusive and that they have. And so I think that's a really good feeling to have that like big sister, big brother figure in your, like Reb said, in your back pocket. So
real quick,
yeah.
I want to piggyback off that. So I mentioned this in the email when I sent it to you guys, but every year there's tons and tons of Olympians. And when I was talking to Caroline a few weeks ago, I asked her, I was like, well, how do you screen for this? Because, I mean, to be frank, I don't think many people want Ryan Lochte telling their kid, like, how to really behave. But, that's no offense to him. He's a wonderful personality. How do you guys go about choosing who you work with? How do you train them to have these conversations if they might not have a sociology background? And then also, I'm going to name drop a couple because they're quite amazing. But anyways, that's my question.
Yeah, so we actually have a course that we've created for the Olympians that they take when they join our crew. And we're very, very intentional with who we bring on. A lot of it is personal connection as well. And then they go through an interviewing process with us. We go over their goals, what they want to do, if they're competing, if they're not, what other jobs or everything else that they have going, what their life looks like. And then, like I said, they have a course. So it's 6 weeks long. And it's all of the positive psychology, sports psychology blended together that we've created that they take, complete path. And then we work with them on all of the exercises that they can use. They have a whole bank of resources and information. And so we each have our roles with them as well, Rebecca and I, when we work with them, so that we can lead them in the proper direction, so that they are all trained on and absolutely fantastic. We definitely do not take anybody that's a question mark. We've had situations like that, and that's definitely not in our best interest at all. So.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know, how do you, on the one-on-one sessions, who drives what the issues are that you address in sessions? Is it mutual, or is it all coming from some program, the program that you guys have?
Yeah, great question. So while we do have a loose curriculum, it's not a school type of curriculum like meeting 1, we do this, meeting 2, we do that. Instead, we very loosely follow the curriculum while meeting the athlete where they are. So for example, if it's a curriculum that talks about goal setting, but the athlete is so nervous and, freaked out about these big goals and it's not serving them, then of course we're not just going to follow the curriculum. So while we have a lot of information, we have these exercises, and the mentors, like Caroline said, are well trained on teaching these aspects. But I would say in general, a general session would look like checking in, getting to hear how the week went, how did last week's exercise go, let's talk about what you've taken away from that, then potentially introducing a new topic if they're ready to move on. If they're not ready to move on, then we dig deeper into the current topic. But at the same time, if something comes up and how did the week go that needs to be addressed, that's totally not on curriculum, that we're able to determine that's what we need to be talking about right now, and we gear our questions towards that direction. And it is always about helping the athlete learn it for themselves. We're not here to lecture. It's not about, taking notes and just study it and come back next week. It's literally nothing to do with that. Instead, it's really, I like to think of it as they are writing a user manual for their own minds. And it's something, wouldn't it be nice if we all had this user manual to understand, what do I do when I get really mad and I don't want to be mad, but I am? Or what do I do when my emotions take over, or when I get really nervous? And so we're helping them to essentially discover that you can create your own user manual, so to speak, and they start to just turn inward and investigate how their mind works and start to create better practices for themselves all across the board. And so to kind of loop back to the curriculum, one part topics that are clearly laid out based on our positive psychology studies and other resources that we've absorbed in our own experiences. One part meeting the athlete where they're at, knowing what they need, and diving into those things can definitely take priority over just following any curriculum.
Perfect. So questions are good about the program, but also if you guys have any questions about what they talk about on a daily basis, feel free to ask those as well. So.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. So what kind of success have you had with swimmers who have the mindset that I can't do that? I'm comfortable where I am. I don't want to set goals because I don't want to fail. What have you had success with swimmers like that have that kind of mentality?
For sure. I actually just had an athlete commit to University of Alabama this past year, and she was a fantastic example of this. Did really had a hard time setting goals and was very superstitious that if she set them and they didn't come true, then I failed. And then the whole failure thing. So again, what we work on is understanding what that belief is deep down. And hers was that I'm terrified of failure because it means that I'm not worthy of that success. So then we go way back into that and we dive into that pretty good. And it's stuff that she's fearful of within her ability to actually succeed. So what we did to combat that was we took the word goals completely out of it and talked more about what she wanted to see and how she wanted to feel. And eventually over time, it took some time, just as anything else, your athletes don't go to one practice and get better. It took 2 seasons of really understanding this is the kind of athlete that I am. I want to focus on how I want to feel, and I want to focus on what it is that I want to achieve in my life versus I'm going to set this goal and I have to get this goal, or else if I don't get this goal, then I'm a failure. So we started broad and we were able to go back to the feeling of what she wanted to have. That's just one example from one of my athletes, but she really did very, very well based on that, because I think that the word goal, her association with that was failure. So we redefined a lot of that in those definitions, because she just did not have any association with that. And every athlete's different. Like I said, my brother, goals. I was like, I don't even understand, no. I just want to have fun, and I know that I want to be around my friends, and I want to achieve this, and I know I can do it, and it's feeling. And so just understanding what that athlete is, it's kind of like learning styles in school. When you know their learning style in school, they all of a sudden excel. If they don't know their learning style in school, they're going to struggle because they're going to try and keep up with what everybody else is doing or fit into a mold that they're told to fit into. So it's understanding how they learn and then going forward. If that answers your question. And feel free to be like, I don't get what you're saying.
Hi, Don Maynard. Question is this: how do you pair up the athletes to the particular mentors? So how do you make that decision of which athlete works better with which mentors?
Great question. So we ask the athletes to fill out an application. It's to ask a chance to gain insights on them through questions like, what are your proudest achievements? What do you like most about yourself? What are your biggest challenges? Where are your rooms for improvement? And through that, we're able to collect some really useful information, whether it's an athlete is dealing with a shoulder injury and they're not quite sure how to do that, or maybe we've had an athlete who, unfortunately, very sadly lost a parent recently, and they were kind of dealing with the processes of that. And so these little tidbits that they give us in this application allow us to, having a good understanding of the mentors and where they're coming from, it really allows us to connect similar experiences, but also similar personalities. So if we have someone that's very clearly, more bubbly or fun and just kind of takes things very lightly, but wants to work on their mindset, we know exactly which mentor is going to help bring the best out of them. Whereas if we have a really introspective, really quiet person, you don't really want to pair it with some loud mentor that's going to be like, rah, 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 So each one has that, their personality really does come through on those applications. And so we ask them if they have any preference. Do you prefer to work with male or female? It's pretty much open to doing that. Most of the time we pair girls with girls and boys with boys, just because it's easier to have a big sister for a girl and big brother for a boy. But we really do cater to both their personalities and experiences.
Thank you.
Other questions? It's open session. Take it easy.
I go. What do you do, or do you address swimmers that are having trouble maybe undersleeping a lot? Most swimmers that I know are more than most students. So do you address things like that? How do you do that?
Is it a choice to undersleep, or is it Or is it just stress from school?
Let your mom answer that question.
So they have the long practices, and then they come home late, then they have homework, and they're
They
taking a
eat.
full load of classes, whether it's, higher level classes. They might have an extra job on top of that.
Mhm.
They have to have dinner.
Mhm.
With a boyfriend in there.
Got to throw the Instagram and the boyfriend in there.
So, we're talking late, right? And then school starts, she has to be up super early, and school starts at 7:15. She's up early, not a late morning, it's not a late entry from school. So it's managing all that, and obviously get sleep in there, so that helps with it.
And then Carl abuses her.
Oh, that's a good thing. It's a good point, and something Rebecca and I have focused, I think, more recently this past year on with our athletes is the art of recovery. And I think that it's an extremely important tool for them to understand and to use. And it doesn't always happen naturally to where it's like all of a sudden you have all this time to sleep, and life happens. Like you said, they have school, they have tutors, they have boyfriend, they have food, they have training, they have all of these things that they have to do. And understanding time management is something that we work on as well. Just understanding what are you giving all of your energy to? What do you feel like you don't have enough energy for? Like, where are your energy levels? What's your rating? Where are you feeling out of balance? And then going from there and understanding it. So it goes back to what Rebecca said. A big part of our curriculum is understanding where they're at. And if they are at a place in their life where they're feeling totally like out of balance entirely, and balance is relative, we're always going to be a little bit out of balance. But if you're always just scattered and out of balance and not sleeping and not recovering, then let's figure out why and figure out where we can control the energy there. And I think, to be quite honest, and I'm sure Rebecca can add to this, for them to have someone to help them through that and understand that and maybe open up about why, that's really helpful. I know when someone just listens to me, I feel a lot better about understanding what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, and how to balance my life. I'm just like, I don't know, there's so many things going on. And it's like, okay, well, boom, boom, boom. It's like, oh, okay, you understand me, you accept me, moving forward, we can go there. So I do know that having a listening ear is also helpful to learn some balance. But I remember that it's a lot.
Yeah, it's great to get that extra perspective, an outsider's perspective. And, one of the amazing things, and the reason that, we all are Olympians, and luckily they like to listen to Olympians a little bit more than they like to listen to mom and dad sometimes. So a lot of parents will come back to me and say, my kid is telling me what you're working on, and it's so crazy because I've been telling them this for so long, but they were like, here's this new thing I've never heard because Rebecca told me. And it's like, the parent was like, we really appreciate that they listen to you, but at the same time, it's not even about listening to us or us telling them what to do. It's about giving that different perspective and allowing them to discover their why for why they do things. And when you're young, when you're a kid, when you're in high school, when you have boyfriends and all this exciting stuff, that is the why. It's being part of the group. It's, the whole experience. You don't really want to stop and sleep. And so just telling them to sleep more just isn't going to work because it's not high enough on their priority list. And so it's really just a matter of having them understand what are their priorities and really getting down to their own why for why they do certain things. And while, a lot of, we're talking about like high school age kids, but this is going to be really important come college time when, especially if they're competing in swimming for college and balancing, college education and, being able to have those time management skills and starting early on understanding I have to choose my priorities. I can't do everything. And understanding both the value of self-care and recovery that Caroline was mentioning earlier, those values of self-care, it's easy to like skip a few hours of sleep and feel okay the next day. You don't really notice those effects, but you start to learn over time that those effects really do add up. And once you start to learn that for yourself and experience that for yourself, then it becomes important to really pick and choose my priorities and again, understanding the why behind what we do. You know, we had to make a lot of sacrifices, and a lot of times hearing the stories of things that we've sacrificed, you know, it's not that that's for everybody, but it helps give a perspective that, oh, you know, maybe I shouldn't just be picking the most exciting thing right now, but let me start to take a little bit more long-term decision-making approach and see a bigger picture and understand what recovery really is and how important sleep is, and you know, just give them the tools and the information to make their own, hopefully better decisions.
And I will say, for as much as you probably don't think that they listen to you, they do. I think every session my athletes talk about what parents say to them that's helpful, or suggestions or support. And a lot of journaling, like if we do a lot of journaling about who supports them and like how they feel, et cetera, it's always my mom, my dad, my grandma, my uncle. It's way more than you're probably being told yourself. So that's always feedback that we give as well. And just so you guys know, at the end of our seasons, we do provide feedback to you guys, of course, within confidentiality. And we always let you know if there's something that you need to know 100% at the moment in time. And that's something we take great pride in. It's just that ethical code that we have, but we always provide feedback with you guys according to their successes, things they can work on, and things that they're proud of, as well as your feedback about what they can work on in the future too, from your perspective. So again, you're supported, and that's really valued.
On that note, could you talk about your, sorry, I'll ask my question. Could you talk about the parent Facebook group? Because you guys did the monthly calls with nutritionists and all that, don't you? Could you talk to that?
Yeah. So we have a parent Facebook group, and it's just called Parent Support Community, brought to you by RISE. So athletes don't have to be RISE athletes. They can be any athlete, and you guys are all welcome. Open group for you. It's the place where we host live Q&As every month. So we have Thursday of each month. There's an invite on the page, but every Thursday will be a different one per month. So this coming month is nutrition for athletes from our nutrition expert, Anita Nall, who is an Olympian as well. And she is our contracted and nutritionist that works with athletes on the side as well, if you guys want a referral. And then, yeah, the past 2 months have just been general Q&As, mindset tips, questions, just to get the ball rolling. But that's been a huge success. And that group is also a place where parents can connect with each other and ask each other questions, ask us questions. All of our Olympians are on the page. They can answer the questions, just have discussions and put inspiration. I know one of our parents puts articles up and things like that from the page as well. So it's an extension of our page.
Perfect.
They just died.
I'm going to give, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to share all your emails, and they have a parent ebook. I'll have them explain that, and the Facebook group. I definitely want you guys to have access to that, because it's a lot of really cool information. But we'll send that at the end. Yep. Any other questions as far as, okay.
Hi, my name is Na. I have a question for you. I know that when you guys going out in high school, you have a lot of interest. How do you deal with disappointment when your mom say, no, you don't have enough time to do this? You choose between what you want to explore and what you're passionate about. And a lot of tears, a lot of, wanting to roll your eyes, walk in your room, close the door, not talking for 2 days. So how do you deal with that? I know eventually she loved what she's doing in swimming. Eventually she realized that's what she loves to do. But it's hurt me to see her crying because she wanted to explore something else. How do you deal with that? I mean, from your point, are you resenting the fact, you resent the sport that you have to give up so much?
Could you guys hear that?
Yeah, so could you kind of paraphrase?
So, this one from the parents, as far as staying focused on academics, athletics, staying on path, but the child or young athlete wants to explore other opportunities, and then sometimes there's other sports, whatever it may be, but sometimes there's a battle between focus versus I want to try everything.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it is a little bit situational in the sense that sometimes I see nothing wrong with exploring other options. It really depends on your goals. And, not every athlete, in fact, most athletes in RISE are not, gung-ho on making the Olympics. They just want to add this mental component and having this mentor into their training. But, we have to really balance and look at what are my objectives. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing what I do? If I'm just swimming because mom told me to or coach wants me to and I don't want to disappoint them, it's really good to clarify that and to, it goes back to asking these questions, because questions really make us obviously think about what it is that we do want. And so if we've been talking with an athlete, or if you talk with your athlete and you're asking the right questions and you start to realize that, perhaps their overall experience in high school might be more important than just, maybe they're not trying to get a full scholarship or they're not trying to make an Olympics, but they really feel like, all the time in one sport isn't necessarily that conducive to all these other things that they want to do. It's worth discovering, because who says you only have to do one thing? But then again, if your objectives and your goals are less about experience and having fun and more about, I want to go places, I want to make nationals, I want to get recruited to college, then it's a totally different discussion, and it's a lesson really in commitment and making your own decisions. Then it becomes a matter of making it fun, making it exciting, making those things that they think they're missing out on into less significant than what they are working toward. So it's kind of like being on a diet and looking at the window of a bakery shop. You can't just look at the things that you don't want. This is a great opportunity to redirect focus and point it in the direction that you do want to go. It takes a little bit of muddling through the gritty kind of ugly parts that you're not really sure where you want to go. And of course, no high school athletes knows exactly what they want to do, or just, most people in general don't know what they want to do. I still don't know what I want to just do, and it's a big question. But you have, the ability to have those conversations and hopefully start to direct focus towards the direction that they do want to go, rather than, oh, I'm missing out on this. And, we've certainly, both of us have missed out on many things. I didn't go to my high school prom, for example. I don't necessarily think I missed out, but that's my own personal perspective. I had a competition. It wasn't a big one, but I chose to do that instead because that's where I wanted to, that was going to help me along the path of where I wanted to go. And so, to summarize a couple of things that are in play here, one is focusing on where you want to go rather where you cannot go. Focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do. And really ask those hard questions of, why am I doing what I do? If they're constantly disappointed, they're either just not having fun or they don't love it. And is it worth forcing yourself to do something that you don't love? It's a tough question, but it's worth looking at.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And then also, how are we on time for you two?
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions?
Yeah, I'm going. Ben, is there a certain minimum age, or is there like a maturity marker or something where you found that your services work better, or they take to the coaching that you're offering? What age range of kids do you guys work with?
Yes, we typically start about 13. Not to say, full disclosure, we've had a couple 12-year-olds that have been mentally available and ready to learn and understand some of the concepts, but we've noticed, to be totally frank with you guys, that 13, 14 is the minimum age to where they can really understand and digest the material, as well as create a relationship, knowing that it's not about fixing anything. It's about evolving as a person, as an athlete, and being able to perform in a way that they want to. So it's a little bit more of a mature relationship when they hit that teenage, the teen after the number right there. So I think that's the key. And we've worked with mainly athletes all the way up until they go to college, and sometimes even trickling into college as well, if that's something that they choose to do individually. So that 13, 14-year-old range.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? Okay. I think that covered it from our end. So we appreciate it very much. Oh wait.
You say you were going to do some name dropping.
Oh yeah, I'll do that. So I'll name drop for you guys, and then if you could go through the ebook real quick, because I think you sent that out. I think some of you might have already gotten that, right? Okay. Okay. Well, anyways, we'll figure that out. So if you followed any of swimming, so we've got Ian Crocker. He was a multi world record holder. He kept breaking his own record. So he dominated. What was it? 2000 to pretty much 2008. Total badass. Son in Texas. We've got a guy I went to Arizona with, John Bassan. He's from South Africa. He's a distance swimmer, an Olympian for South Africa. I'm just going through the guys right now. We've got Adam Mania. Who'd he represent again?
Poland.
Yeah.
He was Poland? Anyways, swam in the U.S., represent Poland. Kirsty Kowal, swam at Georgia. So when I went to Europe for a circuit of meets when I was 15, she was like my mother figure there. So she was in the Olympics in 2000.
I'm sure she would appreciate that.
Probably. I looked like Gollum, no joke, in a suit because we had to wear suits. But she took care of me. Wonderful, wonderful person. Who else? Kathleen Hersey, hometown hero from Roswell, so it's in Atlanta. Wonderful person. But I don't know. There's tons and tons you have. They're all amazing. I sent an email. I know pretty much everyone they work with. They're amazing people far before they are amazing athletes. I don't know who else. I mean, right here, I'm pointing out to Rebecca. We've got like multi-world record holder. We've got medals between the both of them. I mean, Caroline, your whole family's pretty much Olympians right now. Crazy.
And Elizabeth Beisel, Bria Larson. We have 3 water polo girls. Cami Craig, Heather Petrie, and Betsy Armstrong. We have a gymnast, Bridget Sloan. She's fantastic. She went to Florida with Elizabeth and I. And other athletes that are very interested. We spoke with a couple of winter Olympians as well. So it's growing quickly. So it won't be just swimming, which will be really neat. But swimming is obviously the dominant of ours. But yeah, the more recent ones would be Bria and Beisel and why am I blanking on the one from last
Kim Vandenberg, Kate Ziegler.
Yeah.
Bria's still competing, which is cool. She's our only athlete still actively competing, pursuing her dream. So it's pretty cool that, this is an opportunity for her to help, give back while also maintaining her busy travel schedule, because she's done sessions with kids while she's at meets in, all over the world, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And Lacey Niemeyer, Andrew.
Oh, you're working with her now?
Yeah.
She was amazing. Oh, you talk about someone who's focused and committed to like 1 or 2 things. She is the definition of that. I think her list is 3 fingers long. 3 fingers. So she's wonderful. Anyways, so the ebook. I know Caroline, you had mentioned that. Do you want to go through that, or Rebecca go through that?
Yeah, sure. Reb, do you want to, or do you want? Either way, go for it. Okay. So we have a free ebook on our website, which is just about 4 to 5 topics of things that we work on. And it's specifically for you. The athletes can totally look at it if they want, but we work on those things with them anyways. But those are topics that we focus on at RISE. And like I said, we have a huge bank full of all work that we do as far as topics and everything from beliefs to focus to mindset to visualization to fears, obstacles. I mean, you name it, there's something for everything. But what we gave you guys is the 4 to 5 core things that we work on, as well as some tips and tricks for parents to communicate with athletes. So that's for you guys, free resource for you to have. And then also the parent Facebook page. Totally can just request to join, and there's a couple questions to where we can get to know you. It's your athlete, what they do, what you're excited about, what they're excited about, and then you join the parent Facebook group. So we're almost 200 big now, so it's a pretty cool community. But those are resources for you guys.
Yeah, and hopefully you guys can join the Facebook Live next month. That will be fantastic with our nutrition talk with Anita and all. I think that will be next week. Next week. Oh my gosh, it's been a month. I feel like we just did the last one. Next week, what's the date? I know it's Thursday.
It's Thursday, and it's next Thursday at 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern.
And the amazing thing is that they are recorded and they're available there, so you can go check out our last 2 videos. And if you can't make it on time, you can always ask your questions in advance, and we'll discuss as much as we can with Anita. So yeah, that'll be cool for you guys to put in your calendars.
Perfect. And then if you guys are cool, I'll share your emails with them so they can get you all the information, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, I think everyone got all their questions out? Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
I know it's a lot of information, but at the end of the day, it's support, and that's all there is, really. Meaning, like, that's the thing that I remember when I look back on my career, is who supported me. So we're here for you guys and for your athletes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm going to close this out now.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys. All right.
Is it just us?
Yeah, it's just us. Hold on one sec.
I'm like,